Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. Our session today, entitled Commercialization and Entrepreneurship at HBCUs, will be a lively discussion as we talk about some of the ways that HBCUs can incorporate entrepreneurship as well as commercialization and use it as a tool for economic sustainability on campus. My name is Dr. Ashley Hutterson, and I am a coordinator with this current project, as well as a graduate of 2 HBCUs. I'm very excited about this conversation. And I'm joined by 4 panelists who will share more about themselves in the coming minutes. Dr. Veronica Mallett, Dr. Andrew Scott, Dr. Paul Ruffin, Dr. Derek Gilmore, and Dr. Robert Ford. So before I begin and we start this discussion, I want to allow the panelists to introduce themselves. So if everyone could go around and share your name, your background, and just give us some information about your passion around this concept.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I am Dr. Veronica Mallett, and I am president and CEO of MMCV Inc., which stands for Meharry Medical College Ventures Inc. And I've held this position since April. I'm also the executive director for the Center for Women's Health Research here at Meharry. And I am very excited to participate in the panel. We have 2 incubation centers on the campus, and the MMCV Inc. is the latest. It is a wholly owned subsidiary of Meharry with the design to do just what you said, to diversify the revenue streams for the college so that we're less dependent on tuition. And so we are a partnership and investment vehicle. But happy to be with you.
Thank you. Dr. Scott?
Thank you, Dr. Hutterson. My name's Andy Scott. I'm with Alabama A&M University. I'm actually a professor in the electrical engineering program, but I've been tagged the last couple of years with leading the RISE Foundation, the AAMU RISE Foundation. And what that is, that's a 501c3 set up by Alabama A&M University, an HBCU here in Huntsville, Alabama. And what we are tasked with is developing contracting streams for the university. So like Dr. Mallett, we are really tasked with, finding alternative ways to bring income to the university. So we're excited about some of the things that we have going on here, and we certainly look forward to the discussion today.
Thank you. Dr. Ruffin?
Yes, hello, everyone. Like you said, my name is Paul Ruffin, and I graduated from Alabama A&M way back in when did I graduate? 1977. And I've been teaching in the physics department as an adjunct professor since 1979. Retired from the government. I was in DOD leadership. I was a senior research scientist, and that's the highest scientist position that you can get in the government. And when I retired in 2013, I gave the government another year, 2014. So I came to work at Alabama A&M. I am now the chief scientist of the Alabama A&M RISE Foundation. Like Dr. Scott, he is the executive director. So I'm conducting research. I enjoy working with the students, and I'm all about HBCUs. I was telling someone we went to visit another university on Friday, and I told them, I said, Alabama A&M University has the best. They were talking about, can we do business with DOD? I said, of course, because you have Paul Ruffin. I'm a jokester also, because I worked in DOD, and I understand that. So I'm just excited about working with Alabama A&M University.
Thank you. Dr. Gilmore?
Good morning. Again, my name is Derek Gilmore. I serve as the Executive Vice President here at Stillman College, and also serve as our Vice President for Research and Sponsored Programs. I have to admit that people like Dr. Teresa O'Rourke and Dr. Scott actually helped me cut my teeth some 15 years or so ago at Alabama A&M in the Research and Sponsored Programs office. But here at Stillman College, which is a small liberal arts private institution. I am responsible, and actually we received funding from the National Institutes of Health to develop our sponsored programs office and develop a strategic plan and strategic focus for commercialization, innovation, and entrepreneurship. So excited to be a part of the panel and discuss new approaches to engagement and new approaches to successful entrepreneurship and innovation for HBCUs and MSIs. Thank you.
Thank you. And last but not least, Dr. Ford.
Good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you are. My name is Robert Ford. I am a 4-time serial HBCU faculty member and administrator, spanning more than 45 years at 4 historically Black colleges: Southern University, Dillard University, Fort Valley State University, and Texas Southern. I served as Chief Research Officer at 3 of these institutions and Professor of Chemistry at each of them, retiring from TSU in 2013. Currently, I serve on the boards of advisors at Southern University Baton Rouge and Texas Southern University, while serving as CEO of DRF Industries, LLC, a STEM consulting firm focusing on facilitating project development with HBCUs through public and private sector partnerships. I am pleased to be here in this virtual space with my colleagues.
Thank you. And thank you all again for joining us today. Before I jump into our discussion, just want to remind our attendees, please use the Q&A function to ask any questions that you may have. After we've had our initial discussion, we will then go through and answer those questions to the best of our ability. So before I jump in, I just want to share some information about innovation and entrepreneurship, especially as it relates to HBCUs, and then we'll jump into some questions for our panelists. Entrepreneurship is critical to economic growth, and it serves as a vehicle for innovation. STEM fields are rooted in creative development, and they make these fields major, and thus making these fields major sources of innovation, especially via entrepreneurial ventures. The rapid growth of STEM-related products and emerging companies within the STEM industry has resulted in universities becoming key players in the process of innovation, invention, and commercialization. University research serves as a major foundation for many of the current technological advancements in the US. However, due to heavy teaching loads, vertical leadership, and financial instability, many universities find themselves unable to develop their research ideas, especially at HBCUs. Currently, there are 107 HBCUs located in 20 states, District of Columbia, and the US Virgin Islands, and they serve more than 300,000 undergraduate and graduate students. HBCUs make up 3% of all higher education institutions, enrolling about 14% of African-American undergraduate students throughout the nation. HBCUs are especially known for preparing African-Americans to enter math and science-oriented fields by producing 25% of these graduates. And according to a recent UNCF report, HBCUs are the institution of origin among almost 30% of Black graduates of science and engineering doctorate programs. I am a part of that number as a graduate of Meharry Medical College and Spelman College. These colleges and universities produce large numbers of African-American STEM workforce for the country. However, few of these colleges and universities are research focused. Thus, few HBCUs are engaged in innovation and entrepreneurial development. So how do we change this? How do we bring STEM innovation and entrepreneurship to more HBCUs, especially since it's a source of economic development and sustainability? The purpose of today's session is to discuss the current status of HBCU innovation capacity, and understanding this status allows us to lay the foundation to understand the types of interventions that are needed to bring these institutions forward. Our goal of this session is to create a data-driven record of the current capacity and capabilities of HBCUs in terms of innovation. So with that being said, and I will throw this to all of the panelists, why do you think more HBCUs are not involved in STEM innovation and entrepreneurship from a commercial and research perspective?
Well, Dr. Hutterson, I'll start this conversation, and I'm glad that you provided some background on kind of the current state of where we are from a capability and capacity standpoint at HBCUs and MSIs. One of the interesting things that I found is through some analysis of the NSF Herd Survey, what we've seen over the last year, when we look at overall research expenditures for for minority serving institutions is that we've actually seen about a 5% shrinkage in the overall research expenditures, whether they be from federal sources or institutional sources. And so I'll get back to your actual question, but I just want to put that background and make sure that we have an understanding of what kind of trends we're seeing in R&D that support commercialization and entrepreneurship around for HBCUs and MSIs. At the same time that we've seen a 5% shrinkage based on the 2019 information, the top 50 institutions have seen a 7% growth in overall R&D. And we know that 53% of the monies that support R&D at all schools is supported by the federal government. So to answer your question, one of the biggest things that we have to do is, from a strategic standpoint, to make sure that we're very intentional about future growth, actually invest institutional dollars in our R&D development efforts. And so I think we have to be intentional about investing those dollars and then determining, again, what our niche is and what we want to support as far as from a local standpoint, and then where we fit in the global landscape as well.
So I'll go next. I think to add to Dr. Gilmore's comments, which I fully agree with, is the need to make an investment in the faculty and retool that recruitment effort, and to bring with that recruitment a package that allows those faculty, when they join the institution, to be successful. So they're given the sort of runway, if you will, in order to be successful until they can be independent investigators and fund their own salary. And that we have that robust Office of Sponsored Programs and mentorship, so that the newly recruited faculty are successful in their grantsmanship and bringing those research dollars. Our institutions are not short of innovators. We are some of the most creative people on the earth, and we've had to be that in order to be where we are, despite the obstacles that are put in front of us. It is the disproportionate opportunity that Dr. Gilmore alluded to, and the opportunity for that institutional investment that I think the absence of the early establishment of diverse revenue streams has not afforded us. And secondly, the absence of that rich endowment that many PWI and state institutions enjoy, that is absent from many private HBCUs.
I'll go next. Let me start by saying that we are in a most uncommon era. The confluence of a Biden administration, a pandemic, and the George Floyd murder has presented HBCUs with unprecedented opportunities. However, be aware that these are fleeting opportunities and must be captured now and in real time. Relative to your question, the answer is, of course. After spending almost a half a century at HBCUs working with faculty and administrations, I have informed opinions about these issues and others we will discuss today. Innovation and entrepreneurship are add-ons to folks having more tasks to undertake than their counterparts in some other institutions where innovation and entrepreneurship are common practices. Additionally, costs are associated with these areas of practice. Teaching, advising, service, and research considerations take a considerable amount of time, leaving little for other undertakings. Bringing about innovation and entrepreneurship for themselves and for their students requires specialized skills not generally acquired in graduate school, and thus training and mentorship are required. My observations inform me that gaining these skills grows out of interacting with business and industry and even government professionals, not much of which happens with our faculty and administrators. Entrepreneurship and innovation skills development are not routinely provided as faculty development focus areas at HBCUs. In short, These practices are simply not generally in the current culture of HBCUs.
I'll go next, let Dr. Scott sum us up. My experience has been that in the professors are graded at the performance on how many papers they write and things like that. And I think if somehow in that performance, they can get graded for research. And I have to admit that our dean, Dr. Dean, he's doing that. He's given monetary awards to professors that will bring in research dollars. So he's motivating them to do that. So I think with more motivation for professors, more so than just writing papers and going to conventions and things like that, if to get the way Dr. Dean is doing it, he's motivating the professors to conduct research. And I think with that, we'll do more research, have more innovation from our postdocs, new faculty, and things like that. So I see, as a matter of fact, Alabama A&M, we're on the right road to do that.
Thank you, Dr. Ruffin. I really want to just reiterate what the other panelists have said. The reason that HBCUs typically are not involved in a lot of these things is it has to do with its time and effort, right? So, and the other panelists have alluded to this repeatedly, and I'll do it again. I'm a professor. I teach classes. I also serve as director of the RISE Foundation. A lot of us wear multiple hats. We're busy from sun up to sundown, and there's just not time like a lot of the faculty have at some of the PWI institutions and things like that. So it's really, from my perspective, I've been at this for about 20 years here at the university, and funding is available, but it takes a dedicated professor to go after it. So you got to have dedicated faculty, and then to complement that, you also have to have capacity at the institution to be able to handle dollars that come in, to be able to deal with things like compliance, accounting systems, FARs, DFARs, all these things. And typically, we all know HBCUs are underfunded, so we struggle to pay folks to come in to deal with these kinds of issues. And it's all about dollars talk. So when we get more dollars, that's really our goal here, is that we really are incrementally trying to inch our way up the ladder to try to acquire more funds. I don't think we can do an instantaneous jump because we don't have the capacity, and the professors don't have the time to invest. So we have to do it one professor at a time. That's kind of our approach here. So we get some small projects, we add professors to them, we add students to every project. We also simultaneously build our capacity, as we go. So we add accounting systems when we get some overhead from a contract or something. And another thing I'd like to mention too is, it's not just grants. I think we're all used to dealing with the grants world, but these days the vast majority of government funds comes from contracting. So there's billions of dollars, particularly here in Huntsville. So we're we have a great geographical location being here in Huntsville. So there's billions of DOD dollars that flow through the city every year. And that's really kind of been the goal of our administration. Hey, we have probably a dozen different universities from around the country have offices here in Huntsville, and we're located here in Huntsville. We need to be taking advantage of these things too. So that's really some of the things that we're trying to accomplish here. And I think a lot of the other HBCUs certainly could emulate some of the things we're doing and strive forward. I think contracting is going to be the wave of the future, and we need to definitely be involved in those areas.
Thank you. And I'm hearing some of the things that we know in the literature around barriers for HBCUs with stepping into this space, as well as other spaces as it relates to grant funding, capacity issues, having the time, being overworked, wearing multiple hats in addition to your teaching load, applying for tenure, as well as trying to be all that you can be for your students, whether that's professional, social, all these aspects around the things that you get when you attend an HBCU. And so I was wondering if you all would expand more. Dr. Ruffin, Dr. Ford, and Dr. Scott kind of talked about this a little bit on how can HBCU researchers and institutions just get started, right? How do you step into this space? How do you provide relief in terms of a capacity issue for workload? How do you incorporate this into tenure? How do you partner, right? These are just some suggestions, but how does an institution or a faculty member just get started down this path? You can talk about how your institution started, or how your programs came about that allow them to grow, and be scalable and sustained.
And I was wondering if is it possible to share my screen?
As the moderator, I can make it possible.
Yes. Yes, you can share your screen.
Okay.
Go
So
for it.
what I wanted to share briefly is the Meharry incubator that we have designed. And we did this with a small grant that we got from the Frist Foundation and a number of local businesses. So Huntsville has a unique advantage in terms of the government contracts and the aeronautics industry and all of the innovations that is happening there. And Nashville has become a kind of a healthcare ecosystem. And with the $1 million donated to the social determinants of health, we started this Resilient Seed incubator for anybody on our faculty or students to apply to. And so far, we've gotten small fundings to one of our residents who is a psych resident that has developed an app, which I'll refer to. We have two startups, one on mental health and isolation in the underserved, and the other one on recidivism and mental health in the underserved. And then Dr. Don Elcinder, using his extensive work on HIV virus, has developed tools for Zika and for the coronavirus, which have the potential to be an opportunity for Meharry to capitalize on that intellectual property and so forth. So just briefly for Dr. Anthony, this is the Yana app that allows for a video connection for veterans, of which Dr. Anthony is a veteran. And then Dr. Parham, another resident, allowing clinicians to diverse evidence-based assessments. And what we offer them is support. We have external partnerships also with which we're making contributions to and helping them to launch their business. And we're providing some partnerships which are in Tennessee designed in order to create entrepreneurship and to do what was alluded to before by one of the other faculty in terms of instilling in our faculty entrepreneurial skills. You don't come from your PhD program or your MD program as a scientist to be an entrepreneur, but there's certain skills that an entrepreneur needs, and we need to train our faculty in those skills. And so we've invested in them with the app that I previously described, and the community health Wounded Warriors app, and accelerating that investment with launching the center and also investing in that training. And so this is a complement to our unique and growing brand. I'm going to stop sharing at this point and just summarize by saying that the incubator it serves a different function than the organization that I'm a part of. And what our vision is to create profitable partnerships that would benefit from being associated with an academic health center, and that need that credibility that goes along with being with an academic health center, and sometimes that brain power. And that allows for us to create some equity stake partnerships where investment may not be the only vehicle that we have, because we don't have a lot of capital. We didn't come to this venture space able to do the last dollar or even the first major dollars. We'd have to be small investors. But what can we invest? We can invest some expertise, we can invest credibility, we can bring some of those contracts that Dr. Scott alluded to, that would be escape what maybe our partner, but the affiliation with Meharry allows that partner to access that. So I'd ask our audience to kind of envision what it would take to develop in your faculty the entrepreneur skills. And I think that Dr. Ford is serving that purpose with his company to act as a consultant to help our HBCUs develop the innovations that faculty bring into a marketable product.
Thank you, and thank you, Doctor. And to reiterate some of the statements by Dr. Scott and by Dr. Millett, a couple of things we want to, I think as HBCUs, we need to take into consideration is innovation in our approaches to faculty and research appointments. I think there are a lot of new approaches, and I think the RISE Foundation at A&M has done a great job and is doing a great job of looking at, because tenure is not important to all faculty. And of course, so I think we need to look at those things. Again, innovative approaches to how we engage and retain talent. And again, understanding the variety of interests that individuals who may be those who may be interested in actually utilizing the research facilities on our campus to support our, articulation agreements that we have for commercialization, for inventions. Also, to Dr. Scott's point, one of the things we need to be intentional about, and I always talk about this intentionality, but we have to be intentional about how we use those F&A dollars and indirect costs that come into the institution from our projects to actually build capacity and invest in our infrastructure. And I think those pieces are critical as we, again, move to engage a new and different type of faculty or researchers at our institutions, but also allow us to invest in ourselves so that incubator systems and things that they're working on in Meharry become the standard versus being isolated incidents across HBCUs and MSIs.
I believe the #1 catalyst to set HBCU researchers and institutions on an entrepreneurship path is the exposure in the form of cross-sector collaboration with other institutions and professionals who practice entrepreneurship. As you know, entrepreneurship is not reserved to STEM courses and STEM students. Rather, it is a multidisciplinary, and it is a way of thinking and seeing the world as an integration of knowledge and skills. By the way, HBCUs would benefit from providing its faculty and administrators with training and mentorship opportunities. Students can grow their entrepreneurship skill set through strategic internships and cooperative experiences. In short, exposure for faculty, administrators, and students to entrepreneurial environments moves HBCUs in the right direction.
Let me just springboard off of Dr. Ford. Something as simple as, we have the AAMU RISE Foundation, which is a 501c3 foundation, and we cannot serve as the primary contractor. We have to be a subcontractor on SBRs and STTRs. And so just something as simple as that. With these companies that we are teaming up with, that's what they have done. They have, they come up with these innovative ideas. They start their companies. They start going after these SBIRs. And so when we work with them, that will give professors, it will motivate us as professors to do the same thing. So we can have professors that will team up with another company, but then they'll come up with an idea, then they can have their own company, start their own company to do the same thing that the company that we were a sub to. Just want to put that out there.
Yeah, that's a great, that's a great point, Dr. Ruffin. Yeah, I just like to reiterate, Dr. Ruffin talked about the SBIRs and STTRs. Here in Huntsville, we are blessed to have hundreds and hundreds of small business startups, and they're all hungry and going after different things. And we have many of them as advisors to us. So we have opportunity to compete on a number of SBIRs and STTRs. We typically submit, multiple proposals every time that we have an option for those. We have active SBIRs, now I think we have 4 or 5 active ones, and we get students involved. So almost every project that we have, with the RISE Foundation, we get students involved, or at least, very least faculty. So we get faculty and some students involved. They get internships, co-op opportunities, as well as getting to work on some cutting edge type STEM activities, through these companies and these STTR type funds that, it's just incredible, really. So one thing that, I guess kind of the focus that we're trying to put forth here at RISE is that we're trying to partner with as many small business folks that we can, as well as the large primes. Of course, everybody wants to team with them, but we also have, lots of teaming agreements with small business here. And Dr. Orrock with our entrepreneurship area is really, really robust and going after some of these things and attracting partners to the university. And that's really attracting a lot of attention here locally. And our new administration, we have a new president coming in here soon, and he's expressed a strong interest in setting up some business incubators similar to what Dr. Malay has talked about. So, we're pushing on all these different fronts and we're making progress. So it's an incremental thing, of course, but we're getting there.
Yes, definitely. And thank you all for sharing that. So now we are going to pivot to our Q&A session. I encourage all of our attendees again to share any questions that you have in the chat, the Q&A function that we have. You can also put them in the chat and we will monitor them. While we wait for a few more questions to come in, I want to just kind of expand on some of the things that we've talked about here. And if you all could talk through some of the benefits. A lot of times we talk about the lack thereof or the deficit or the barriers to getting here. And so I really want to share or go on record for people to share the benefits of having this kind of STEM entrepreneurship system or center that has a curriculum, that has research, some of the things that faculty may be doing that they weren't doing before this kind of opportunity was introduced at the various universities. You all don't have to answer the question, whoever wants to share, but want to talk about some of the good things that have come out of this and the benefits of doing the work to get to the point where you have this kind of entrepreneurship and innovation center or system at your university.
Well, I'm going to have to leave early, so I'm going to use this as my summary and departure. I've shared with you some of the young people that we've invested in, but we have also attracted many more partners to the incubation center. And what has that done for Meharry is elevate our stature in Nashville. Meharry's been, we're going to be celebrating our sesquicentennial in 2026. And when I first got here as Senior Vice President of Health Affairs and Dean, and I told people, why I moved here and what I was here to do, they were like, where is Meharry? Like Meharry is best known nationally, but not necessarily in Nashville. And since forming the incubation center and the a for-profit center partnership related and investment vehicle, the MMCV vehicle, that has elevated interest from outside people who are interested in learning about what's going on and partnering with us. So I think what establishing an incubation center will do for you is attract new partnerships, the capacity for developing faculty, and outside investment dollars. I think all of those things could come from that. I shared with Dr. O'Rourke that I've had a commitment that requires that I depart. I ask the forgiveness of my colleagues on the panel, and I appreciate having the opportunity to participate with all of you. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
In response to your earlier question, I would say that since America and the rest of the developed and developing world advance society through innovation, providing students with entrepreneurship and innovation skills make them more competitive and resilient in the marketplace. Students are more engaged when they have experiences beyond traditional classroom instruction. They can more effectively contribute to the bottom line of their employers, and they can better transition to becoming the employer, thus creating jobs for others while generating revenues for themselves and their companies.
And I'd like to add on a point that both Dr. Millett and Dr. Scott mentioned earlier about ecosystems and environment. And I think it's critical that we take an assessment of the needs of, from a local and regional standpoint, that should drive our areas of innovation and projected areas of entrepreneurial need in our communities. Here, at Stillman, and what we've taken, we understand that we sit at the crown of the Black Belt here in the state of Alabama. And one of the things that we understand is that our communities, particularly communities of color, have been decimated by by any and all health disparities that exist. And so, given that notion, through the visionary leadership of our president, Dr. Cynthia Ward, what we've done is to establish a biomedical academy to really address those needs across numerous platforms, across communities, and particularly those of color in this area. But I think it's critical that we take those environmental assessments and understand what the needs are in our local community. And then, of course, we can juxtapose those things to what's happening from a national and an international standpoint as well. And to Dr. Scott's point, the contracting opportunities that not only exist here with American or U.S. corporations and companies, but multinational companies and opportunities that exist for us internationally, we need to be prepared to take advantage of those by having the infrastructure. And he mentioned things like cost accounting systems and loaded labor rates, and understanding the differences in language that we need to be armed with to actually participate in the contracting arena. So I think the environment and ecosystems that we work in locally and have an understanding what the needs are will allow us to gain partnerships and seek investments from local as well as national constituents.
Definitely. So, but being mindful of time, I want to get to, we have about 2 more questions we're going to try to answer. If not, I want to encourage our attendees to reach out to Dr. O'Rourke or even any of our panelists to follow up with additional questions. So the first question, how do local communities surrounding HBCUs actually participate in research and development and international intellectual property development?
I'll take that one, Dr. Hutterson. So here at A&M, as I mentioned, we just have the ecosystem here in Huntsville is just ripe with entrepreneurs, and just having that exposure to our students. Really, I think we start talking about intellectual property. There are a number of local groups here that meet regularly that talk about entrepreneurship, inventions, how do you get patents, things like that. So we're trying to bring some of that information into the university as well. And that's one thing that, Alabama A&M, and I'm sure a lot of the other HBCUs struggle with is, how do we wrap our arms around this intellectual property giant, and where do we get the funds to pay for patent lawyers? I mean, we have great ideas, but we can't protect them unless we spend a lot of money to do that. And we don't have those kinds of resources. So it's kind of a back and forth struggle. Where do you put your resources? Do you go after this intellectual property and things like that? That's where a lot of universities make significant dollars in residuals from intellectual property from years ago. And we're kind of just starting out, in this area, but it's something that we have to consider. And, I think embracing our local community and getting, advice. We have an advisory council with our RISE Foundation where we have, local businesses come in and give us advice on things like this. So that's been a great thing, and it's proven to be a real benefit so far to both our students and faculty members as well.
I'll just add that recently, several of the federal agencies, particularly NASA, has issued a request for information which focuses on HBCUs providing connections between NASA, the agency, and underserved communities. NTIA, a division of the Department of Commerce, recently submitted a solicitation for what they're calling Connecting Minority Communities, and internet and broadband expansion, where again, HBCUs, not only helping themselves to become more robust in that arena, will also reach out to its anchor community, 15-mile radius around the institution, where it can provide workforce training, work with entrepreneurship opportunities for community members. Here in Houston, we're working with veterans, we're working with seniors, and with local schools and community colleges. So this opportunity is being driven in part by equity funding at federal agencies, and by far, there are plenty of dollars in the private sector, the so-called CEO roundtable. 110 of the largest corporate entities in America now has pledged more than $1 billion, more than billions of dollars to support underserved communities. So when we start having communities engaging with HBCUs, and not a lot of it has happened in the past, I think we'll make a lot of progress.
Thank you. So I want to just jump in with our last question. I'm going to give up my wrap up for you all to answer this question because I think it's very important. One of our participants mentioned that they are a graduate of an HBCU, and of course they mentioned their HBCU because that's what we do. Stillman College, 40 years. And they want to know how can their skills, they give an example, but I think this applies to anyone who's a graduate of an HBCU who has a particular skill set that may be of interest, be used as mentoring or assisting faculty in some type of consultant or volunteer capacity. I'm going to add that to their question. So how can our graduates who are working in this space, who are experts that we have trained, come back to the university and engage to promote this type of work?
Well, since we have a Stillman alum, and thank you, Dr. Carter, for asking that question, because one of the things that we've done at Stillman this year, again, through the leadership of Dr. Wark, is establish an executive in residence program. And I think it's critical for our alums to come back and participate and share those worldly experiences with our students, but also serve as not only mentors for our students, but also to share with our faculty cutting edge, approaches to not only, and historically at HBC, or I won't say at HBCUs, but in higher education, we have been concerned with process improvements and new services. But when we look at what's happening in the private sector, and alums like yourself can share with us, innovative approaches to the creation and development of products and services. And so we want to move in that arena, and we know that the launch of this executive in residence program will do that and provide a vehicle to you for doing that. So I look forward to engaging you in our executive in residence program.
And there's another opportunity, advisory boards, for example. And I think there needs to be a little bit of training for deans and other administrators to learn to harness the power of returning alums, retired faculty members, and others in the community who have an interest in supporting the programs at the institution. One simple thing that I've noted, some institutions do not take away email addresses from retired faculty members or even from alums. And I think that's one way to keep the connection going so that you know who can make what contributions to the institution. So I just think this advisory board opportunity is one that we have undervalued and we've not optimized the benefits of having them to support our programs.
Yes. Thank you so much. Thank our attendees. Thank you to our panelists for joining us today. I envision this will be an exciting discussion, and I don't think you all have disappointed at all. So I appreciate everyone taking the time to join us. I encourage our attendees to follow up with additional questions or just reach out to stay connected with our panelists so that you can learn more about opportunities to engage with HBCUs around innovation and entrepreneurship. Our sessions are not over for the day, so I encourage you to continue attending throughout the afternoon. And I thank everyone again for joining us.